I am unashamed. What about you?
So I've been seeing Stone out here every day now. It's on equipment, so something must be happening.
We've waited 4 months. You borrowed the water last October. You borrowed the water. Pump it into your hole. We didn't have to pump last year during October and November going into duck season because the rains did it.
Yeah.
3 inches, 4 inches.
Does that save you a little money?
Thousands. So
because it costs a lot to run a pump.
So we got it up to duck hunting level.
Yep.
I mean, it flooded what we plant duck feed and all this, millet and whatnot. So when duck season came and went, good duck season, very fruitful. So we had plenty of ducks. We got them. Duck season ended. The river slowly started to rise, and it came up to around 36, dropped back down to about 30, and it stayed there for 4 months up to today. But I checked it yesterday, and the riverside where we got our water, borrow our water from, it's beginning to recede. So the backwater is officially fixing to end this week. So now we start draining, dry it up as quick as we can.
Which turns into quite the visual. The feeding frenzy. You get to see the food chain up close and
because everything.
It's a planting frenzy. We're planting the silt. The muck that the high water left, that's rich, rich, rich. The dirt comes out of the water and just silt. And so when it hits dry ground, the first seed that comes up is the seed that wins. So sometimes we wait on the Almighty to plant it, see what he plants, and go with it. Or sometimes we do like this year, as soon as it gets down to the muck, we got a track machine that the Yamaha people have furnished. 4-wheeler with tracks instead of wheels, it's tracks.
Which is a spiritual principle, because last year we planted the rice, and we're not rice planters.
Strike out.
We should have let God plant it, because when we tried by our own effort and resources, we had rice that come up that was beautiful. It looked majestic. Unfortunately, there was no kernel in the rice housing.
Husk in the husk.
So we were left with husk.
Empty
so we
husk.
had
lack of water and fertilizer. We've had to redneck it. Some years it worked, sometimes.
Well, I was trying to make a spiritual application on the whole point of Romans is he sometimes allows you to do what shouldn't be done, so you realize that maybe you should put all your hopes and dreams on his power, not yours. I was just making a spiritual. I'm in that.
Sometimes he plants it. Sometimes the devil plants it. So I look at what's coming up and I'm like,
what about you? You're escaping responsibility.
Smart weed. God did that.
I'm going to refer you to who was our guest here that said, hey, the devil gets way too much credit here.
I see coffee beans and I'm like, the devil's doing his work.
No, yeah, Jase, you could speak to that. The coffee beans
I don't like coffee beans, but they're not.
We didn't realize they were toxic till Jase was out there grabbing them.
Both his hands turned purple.
Purple, yeah.
It'll mess with your heart flow. I said,
which was my point. This is not preferred.
It's like the Germans say, do not walk across those mustard fields because it's toxic at certain times. It'll kill you. You fall dead in them. Si was over there, spent some time in Germany, A German farmer said, oh, no.
No, Si was deer hunting in the mustard field.
Yeah.
Which explains a lot about
and the German alerted him, you could die right there, my friend.
It doesn't explain a lot, but it does at least explain something.
There could have been some loss of the brain oxygen during that period of time. So that's just kind of the season of where things are.
Well, I like making spiritual applications, obviously, but I got this hat from Dallas Jenkins when we.
I was going to ask you about it. Come and see is what it said.
Well, we did this when we watched the premiere of the new show when we were in Dallas. So he gives me this hat Well, when we got up on stage, he said, "We're proud to introduce tonight our new slogan going forward," because they used different verses in the Bible, and one of them was "Get used to different." I'm not sure where that's at, but this one I know because. So he said, "So what's your hat say, Jase?" Well, when he handed me the hat, I never read it. I just put it on my head, so I had to take my hat off. It was embarrassing. It's horrible. And so then I was thinking, what if somebody asked me where that is? I don't know. Because when I saw that, when we were kids and we'd go down to South Louisiana and watch LSU baseball games and all because Phil's sister lived down there. Well, the biggest Cajun phrase down there was "come see."
Yeah.
That was like, "Come over here." What would be the redneck version of that? Or like, "Come here."
Yeah.
They said, "Come see." And so, because when they first would say that, I thought, well, see what?
See what?
Yeah, but there was nothing to see. They just wanted you to come over here. And so, so that got me intrigued. But it's found in John 1 when Philip and Nathaniel, Jesus came up there. Of course, it's one of my favorite callings in the Bible because Jesus was like, "Hey, Nathaniel, I saw you when you were alone under the fig tree, and I knew what you were thinking." That story about Jacob's ladder. I'm the ladder. But
kind of blew Nathaniel's mind.
But what's funny is Nathaniel, he's just ripping Jesus. I mean, here's the creator of the universe in flesh. And he's like, "Where's this guy from?" And he's like, "Nazareth." He's talking to him like he's not there. "Nazareth? Can anything good come from there?" And Philip said, "Come and see." That's where
it came
So
from.
when you think about it, which is really an overall theme, that you have to be willing to take a look at Jesus in your life and to be open to get this.
No
a lot
doubt.
of people keep Jesus at bay in their mind and heart, and they won't come and see.
Yeah.
Because, when I first got in on this, I hoped it was true, but after a little bit, after what I saw, because, Christ in you is the mystery of godliness.
Yeah, I came looking at about 28. I never looked.
Yep.
No searching on my part.
Come and see.
28, I started looking.
Yep.
I'm like,
I think that's why I like this show so much, because
Is that the scene where and then Jesus winks when he like gives
I love that. Look, that's
in that scene.
He asked me what my favorite scene was. Of course, Missy gave a way better answer than me, but that's another story. She. But
you don't want to belittle yourself in front of us. We are. We know.
Well, it was just she gave this tearful.
We're not shocked.
Like
by that,
it pricked your heart about Mary and us identifying when we make mistakes and overcoming our past. And mine was when Jesus winked.
But it was good because it was kind of like there's nothing good out of
You read
nothing good out of Nazareth.
You read
except
Mary's.
me.
you read Mary's lips. Thank you. And he said, "No problem."
For the listeners, Phil just winked.
I've always thought it was a little overkill, that many gallons of wine, but who am I to question the Lord on something?
That's
so
exactly
I said,
right.
Let her rip.
Well, look, here's what people have tried to throw me under the bus over this, but you got to remember, of all, what is the most underrated? This will be a good trivia off the top of my head riddle. What's the most underrated fruit of the Spirit?
Underrated fruit of the Spirit.
Well, I've got you on this one.
Joy,
Peace,
maybe
patience.
joy, peace, patience.
I would say patience.
kindness.
No, I'm talking about
Faithfulness.
underrated. You hear all these sermons on all these things.
Oh, that you don't hear it on this.
Yeah, underrated.
Okay, I got
That's
you.
not ever talked about.
Okay.
You still hadn't got there. You have not named it yet, and we're
Kindness, goodness, gentleness,
30, 45.
faithfulness, self-control.
Uh-oh.
Probably self-control.
Self-control. Because
yeah.
think about this. When you have wine.
Because it's the last one on the list.
It's the last one on the list. And people don't ever look at situations where you could use that. But if the Lord himself made 6, how big were them jars?
It was 180 gallons.
180 gallons of fermented drink.
The finest
contrary to what the fringe group says that it was
in the
before.
redneck world, it demands self-control, I tell you.
Well, you have an opportunity, not demand. You have an opportunity to exercise self-control.
This is about the best I've ever tasted, Lord, but I'm going to drink 2 at the most and call it a night.
But that's what I'm saying. Just think about that power of that. It's a fruit of the Spirit.
Right.
It's not that you're doing it instead of God. Because a lot of people, I just made the point that in a playful way, but I was serious, that God's power is what we're relying on.
Correct.
But he gives us the Spirit.
Right.
One of the fruits of the Spirit is self-control.
Now, Miss Kay is when she comes with a glass of wine, ever so often, she'll walk in and she said, "You want a glass of wine?" I said, "Yeah." She goes in there and she pours me a glass of wine. But 99.999% of the time, that's it. For me to say, "Bring me another glass," is rare.
Right.
I just drink a glass of wine and I go to bed.
Good for your stomach.
Yep.
Well, I just remember when I was having a study with a guy, and he was like, "Well,
I'm not going to make a rule. You can't touch alcohol."
He said, "I can't come to Jesus because I was born a certain way." Well, I was born this way.
So what do you do when you study with somebody and they say, "I can't touch that because I'm a drunk"? What do you tell them? They say, "Look, I used to be a drunk, so what are you doing drinking a glass of wine in front of me?"
Well, exercise the fruit of the Spirit God gave you, self-control. I do think that. What's the verse that says everything is permissible, but not everything is beneficial? Based on your current circumstance, some people should never touch it. I believe that.
True.
Mm-hmm. People like me who don't have a problem, I got other problems. I'm not saying I'm perfect, but I've never been tempted to get drunk because of your past. I mean, just being honest, I thought, not doing that. There's never been a temptation for me to do that.
Yep.
And so once it's easier because I've never have experienced it. I got past the curiosity thing at about 20, probably. I was curious for a while. Now, if you apply that to
sometimes you can watch others and you can say, "I was glad I was curious."
Exactly. Every time I saw other people
commode hugging,
I thought, nope, this just validated that is not a temptation. I am not doing that. So for somebody like me,
what we're saying is experience is really not the best teacher. Someone else's experience is really the best teacher.
What you're saying is observation is a teacher sometimes.
Exactly.
So I think I'm free to drink every once in a while. Because I'm not going to get drunk. I'm not going to drink more than one of anything.
Titus 1 says, "I'm not to be given too much wine."
Right.
So I asked him, I said, "So how much you figure is not much?" And they all look at the sky and they're thinking of me. I said, "You know what it is? Not much." Which would mean a little.
A little, not a lot.
Have a little wine, it said.
That's right.
Have a little wine.
I've actually said that, which was embarrassing. But I was at a restaurant and somebody bought us a bottle of wine. And it wasn't me. Now here I'm in a situation that someone else said, "Hey, we like y'all show and what y'all do.
Kudos to y'all.
Here's a bottle of wine."
Yep.
Okay, now we got an opportunity.
That's behaving like Jesus. Here's some wine.
The waiter pours me a cup of wine. Well, I look back and I said, "That's too much." And he was looking at the bottle. I was like, "In my glass."
That was your bad, Jase, to tell a man when he pours you a glass of wine, you went over the line. Limit there.
No,
you didn't have to drink
I
it.
just thought, well, what if I don't like it? But then I thought, I don't want to put my lips on it and say, I don't like. That's kind of what I was thinking. What if I don't like this? And once I put my lips on it, I'm not then going to pour it in someone else's glass.
No.
So I said, that's too much. So I meant pour it in someone else's glass, but he wasn't registering. So I said, allow me. And so I took mine, poured half of it in my wife's, and I said, "That's perfect. Not much." I used your line.
Let's
But
take
didn't.
a break. So yeah, that's how you learn, right? What's too much and what's
So y'all acting like I did wrong. I thought I did a good thing. But then I tasted it. I thought, ooh, that's pretty good. I'm glad I poured half of this out.
I would have just maybe sipped it, maybe not, but I wouldn't have said, "Hey, don't pour too much." No, I wouldn't do that. I would say, "Good deed, thank y'all, kudos."
Well, so Lisa and I were in California a few months ago, and we were in Napa Valley, which is, I guess, the greatest producer of wine, one of the greatest in the world.
Easy.
And there's all these wineries, and it's a beautiful, beautiful place. But so we spoke at a pregnancy center fundraiser, and I speak at these all over the country. And, obviously there's a lot of religious people that are, pro-life people that are doing these events. But I told her it was unique because I've never been at a pro-life event like that where they had like a silent auction, where you bid on stuff and all the money goes to the group. Everything was wine, because you had all these wineries around there, and
sure.
So everything there had bottles of wine, or it was a trip to stay at the hotel next to the winery, and it was just, and then they were drinking wine, and I had just never been to one of these things because usually it's like quote unquote religious people, so nobody's going to touch any alcohol. But I told them, I've never been to a fundraiser where wine was the feature, but it was because it's there. Yep. But we went around and toured that area. It's beautiful. And
I would say that was a good thing.
It was a great thing because they raised $200,000 that night.
That's what I'm saying.
Self-control as a fruit of the Spirit would probably mean more there.
That's right.
Because you have an opportunity. Why is it in there?
What
else is he talking about?
I went throughout the country, it's like a country, the state of California, but I ran up on decent, hardworking people.
It's great people.
From one end of California to the other. They were good duck hunters. They took care of the duck holes, and they drained water, flooded it. They were a little overkill sometime, and they had little rocks so that you wouldn't even get your boots muddy. I thought that was a little much, but the bottom line is they had some beautiful places. Jase was with me. We all hunted California, but it was great duck hunting.
We got a lot of listeners out there too.
Some of the best people I've ever met.
So the event we spoke at was the first meeting in that county in 15 months. The first gathering of people, because California's been super locked down. And so they were raucous. I mean, they were so excited to just be with people again. It was great for us speaking because, you know that, Jason. You get an audience that is excited about being there. I mean, it helps you be better.
It just comes back to leadership. That's what we said. I mean, they get a bad rap because the leadership is the one setting the tone for how things are going. But you're right. When you look at the numbers on who they vote for and all, pretty sure more than 1 out of 3.
I was surprised there were so many good people there that I was impressed with. And
a lot of them have left there.
Yeah,
last year. It's been a mass exodus.
I mean, they look normal, and shockingly, most of them that I met over there were.
Yeah, that's right.
So see, we learned that you can't lump people in together because you'd be just like Nathaniel saying, can anything good come out of California? And then there's a lot of people that would say, come and see.
Yeah, come and see. which is what I did. And I'm going back in October. I'm excited about it.
Which is a major statement. That's why I'm saying it takes a lack of prejudice of not stereotyping people or watching the news and forming opinions. And the same thing about Jesus applies.
The herd instinct.
Yeah.
If you go to one church out of the thousands that are out there, tens of thousands, and form an opinion, well, no wonder people are leaving.
Well, that's exactly right. So I want to mention Your Daily Fill, which is a book that's exclusive for Walmart. And Dad, this is really good. This is it's a 100-day devotional.
They took the Blaze TV 800 episodes of that
in the woods,
12 to 15 minutes. I recommend just read through one of them a day. You just read through one of them. They took about 100 of them, of the topics, and just a redneck expounding on Jesus, basically.
So you should come out with a book too and have the other 265.
That's right.
Just call it the other.
If we sell enough of these, we will.
And you could
I
call
was
it.
thankful Walmart is the one that.
This is exclusive for Walmart.
I'm giving you breaking. This is a marketing.
That's Walmart only.
Walmart
you can
only.
call it your refill.
Yeah.
Your daily refill.
Pretty smart there.
See, Jase is the market.
Trying to make you some money.
So
and
Jase,
Most
help
people might not know
world.
this, but say what you will about the Walmart type things in the world. But I was driving around in my pickup selling duck calls for about 3 or 4 or 5 years. And when I finally got a few in Walmart just by talking to the sporting goods department back there. But finally the buyer calls me up. I said, "Who are you?" He said, "I'm the buyer." I said, "So how do you fit into this?" He said, "I'm the one who allows you to stock your product in Walmart, and I've never seen you." He said, "How are you getting them in the Walmart chain?" I said, "One store at a time, sir."
You actually weren't allowed to do that.
Yeah, driving around in my pickup truck. He said, "Is that the way you're doing it?" I said, "I'm just going from Walmart to Walmart." I said, in this computerized world, if you and I got together, you being the buyer, I said, "I didn't know you existed." I said, "But it looked like to me we could come up with something." He said, "Come to see me." Well, Jase ended up being the man that I sent up there.
Yeah,
but I met with him a time or two. But he's the one that carried my duck call, put it on a national level without me even knowing it. And we all saw the order and we were like, whoa, Walmart's on board. So from there, basically, if you want to know the truth of the matter, Walmart put us on a national level without us.
did.
And I was sent because of my poker playing skill set of reading people and being
Jase was the
being
one that
able
ended
to-
up talking to the buyers. You see what I'm saying? And he'd hold his ground
He
because
was
they
our
try to
chief
get you at a
negotiator.
cheaper price.
Being able to bluff was a necessity.
Sometimes Jase came back from Walmart. I said, "Okay, did you get the order?" He said, "Didn't get it." And I said, "Do what?" He said, that they wanted to cut our prices too much. He said, so I told him, "No, not enough." So Jay said, "But we'll get them eventually. Just calm down." Well, a few months goes by and the old buyer comes through and said, "Okay, all right, we'll stock them at your price." He told Jase later, he said, "I was just seeing if I could get you a little cheaper."
Hey, the guy, one of them,
It's a game.
that
It's
no
a poker.
longer worked for Walmart. We became friends after. He cussed me out. He said, "Well, I wasn't being serious." Like when I saw him later, he's like, "I was just trying to let you know I meant business," and I left.
Yeah.
And we got to be friends later because 3 months later, no word, and the order came through the computer just with the price I gave him. I mean, he
Jay stuck to his gun.
Well, the
he
problem
just said, "You
Poor
got,
as we were, a lot was
I was
riding
going
on
to say
that.
the problem with any small business.
This was like 6 figures.
Yeah, the problem with any small business is when you rely on one major source, and that's how your business is built. If they happen to cut you out, then you're in a bind. So
We trusted
you have
in
to
God
diversify.
and we moved forward, and the Walmarts of the world come along there. But for the most part, I would say, Jace, they were fair.
yeah."
Would you say?
Well, I mean, they would, if you didn't have the right makeup, because I can't see a lot of people.
So your poker skills, the straight face, deadpan, and it came to life there.
Him cussing me out meant nothing to me. I thought the number is the number. You can, I don't care if you're kicking and screaming, just sign the dotted line and we'll continue.
It's the line for
So-
taking. There's no negotiation. The price is the price.
I got up and walked out. He's like, "You walk out of that door." He's like, "It's over." I just opened it.
All I have to say about him is kudos to Walmart because this book is about spiritual matters.
Yeah,
And they let it in.
they did.
They took it in. Now, they
which
were
is
the only
good.
ones. It's an exclusive, but I'm thank you again,
I think
Walmart.
they
So-
did that by design.
So let's take another break. So one of the good things about the summertime is a lot of people are on the go. They're outside, they're working, they're playing. They're listening to our podcast. While they're
One
working.
of the most frequent things Jesus ever said was, "He who has ears, let him hear."
I like that. That's pretty good. And you can hear even better if you have some Raycon wireless earbuds to listen to our podcast. If you're using that or you're running or you're doing stuff outside, you get crisp, powerful beats at half the price of other premium audio brands. So you want to check these guys out. They go wherever you go. They're very good, very clear. So Raycon is offering 15% off all their products for our listeners. And here's what you do. You go to Buy Raycon. That's BUYRAYCON, buyraycon.com/unashamed. You get 15% off your first order. Buyraycon.com/unashamed and start hearing with your ears. So I want to mention this shirt you're wearing in this picture, Dad, because this will be the last picture that you ever take in that
shirt, ladies and gentlemen. Now,
tell them where it's at now.
It is hanging on a what do you call them? A mannequin.
Mannequin.
When you see the women's with their dresses on, they put me in the museum.
For the listeners,
he just froze.
Dead rigor
The
mortis.
Hall of
Look.
Fame now, and my face was not near like what it really is. It wasn't an exact mannequin,
Yeah.
but it was just a skinny faced dude, you know.
Mannequin.
But he had that shirt on because I sent it to him, and it hurt my feelings because I wore that shirt for 25 years. I never washed it. See the patch right there?
We've celebrated that.
Well,
my wife actually
I hated
said,
losing
think
that shirt, but it's going to be in a museum until Jesus comes back.
That's exactly right.
So unless
Many
the place
people are
burns
looking at that.
down.
I
So
wonder if you get a face mask to be able to see it.
face mask to see what?
He didn't wash the shirt for 25 years.
I know.
If you wanted to go look at it,
So
you would have
It's glass.
It's in a glass thing.
It's in a glass cube. You can't get in there. And it showed, you remember that little tube would cut the end of the duck calls, a little scoop?
Yeah.
That was in there. So they got that from somebody up here.
I got it for him.
They just want to know my little tools of the trade there. It showed
So I
the
had
duck
some of those
call.
old tools, and look, it had worn places in the grip from when y'all were digging out all those end pieces. It was really interesting. So when we went through it the first time with all the big wigs, that are there, and so there's a patch on this pocket, and then half of this sleeve on his arm is a patch.
Yeah, I did the sewing myself.
Yeah, so he sewed up this thing. So
You burned it, right?
it was really interesting because when
Just wearing it out from the
Well, I remember one day you caught on fire in the duck blind. You
I've
had
been
that
on fire.
Shirt on.
So I told Dad, I said, Dad, we need some of your hunting clothes. And I said, I want your sunglasses, the headband, the whole deal, because it's going to go on a mannequin in this museum.
Tell the truth, though. This was a ploy to get that stinky shirt.
Well,
away from
now
me.
here's the thing, though, Jase. So because Martin has been calling me every year for 20 years saying, would you please talk Phil into not wearing that shirt? Because it's made by
it's made by a competitor.
to our sponsor. And I said, Martin, there's Mom, and then there's that shirt. And so, there's that's the linkage of
God, Mom,
and the shirt. That's
It
right.
was the finest for Louisiana weather apparel I'd ever put on my body. And I know that I just looked at it, it said 50% wool, made in Bangladesh or somewhere. And I'm like, whoa. But I put the thing on and I said, whoa, wait a minute. I said, wool. I said, half wool. And I said, man, but that thing.
So look, Jay,
it took a lot of, 25 years.
So when I asked him, his dad's got a closet that's full of camouflaged clothes because you've never thrown anything away, I don't guess. I've
given a lot of that to people.
There are, and you're right, we gave a lot to charity. So there are probably 200 different things in there. So I thought he would just go in the closet and grab something he doesn't wear. So I was stunned. So Dad sends me in a box the hunting pants that he had worn all year last year hunting.
Without
also
washing.
not been washed.
No washing.
And that shirt. So when I opened up
Did
that
you
box,
wear gloves
when I opened up that box, I went, whew, musty. I mean,
It was musty.
It smelled like duck blind, dog.
Should we explain why you don't wash your clothes?
So
It washes the warmth out of them and wears them out faster.
I don't agree.
High dollar
washes the warmth.
soap suds. You keep washing clothes and you wonder why they disappear. Too much washing. It's just too much. So I'm going duck hunting. Why would I need somebody's, you need
And
a
he
good,
can't
nice,
smell.
crisp shirt on.
And he can't smell.
No, I can't smell.
So look, I packed all this up. I put his duck calls in there because it has to. All that stuff goes to New Orleans first, Dad. You probably
I didn't know
this.
that.
Yeah, there's some people in New Orleans. They take stuff from all over for museums, and so then they go and then they set it all up. So I was talking to some woman. I said, "Well, I'm sending you the stuff." I said, "Now look, I'm a little surprised because he sent his favorite shirt that he's born for 25
They
years.
wanted a likeness of me, and I said, well, this pretty well covers it.
But it was great. And so what happened was when I told all the people that were there, you know, when we were there with them, I said, you're not going to believe this, but you see that shirt? And of course, it's so unique because it's got these patches all over. I said, Dad wore that shirt every day hunting for 25 years.
That is correct.
Duck hunting. I said, so that really is him. Now, the unwashed. So, but I thought some poor girl in New Orleans, she opened that box up and she went, whoo, you know, this smells like duck hunting. But now they've got it in a glass case, so I guess it's all good.
Mustiness was never a turnoff to me. Mustiness, something that smells musty.
Right.
Because you get it out in the air, the sunlight, that'd leave.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. That's why they say the number one problem of when there is a problem is admitting there is a problem.
Yeah.
It has to start with the admission. I don't think that's going to start for that. Well, let's get back in and finish up Romans 11.
Well, because I left a teaser a couple podcasts ago. We never got to it. We left off. But similar to Romans 1, when it says God gave them over to do not what ought not to be done. Did I get that right?
Yep.
To do what not ought to be done.
Because they did not think it worthwhile to retain the knowledge of God, God gave them over to do what ought not to be done.
Right.
Yeah.
So he gets to Romans 11 and he kind of has a reminder, because here is this chosen group out of the group who said, we just want to be God's people because we were born in Israel. And he's like, hang on, I want the whole world. Y'all are the foundation, which you got to remember.
But the Messianic Jewish people, the ones who believe Jesus, in fact, was their Messiah, which he was, those who are still in America, when you meet with them, you'll see it makes your heart swell with happiness.
That's right.
Knowing there were some that said, okay, we get it.
There is,
and they live in America. I don't know how many in Israel over there, but as a people, as a nation, nope.
Yeah. But we gave the example last time in Romans 11, Elijah, and there was only a few. He thought he's the only one, and God's like, hey, I got 7,000 you don't even know about. And so he gets to verse 7, and he says, what then? What Israel sought so earnestly it did not obtain, but the elect did. The others were hardened, as it is written, God gave them a spirit of stupor, eyes so that they could not see, and ears that they could not hear, to this very day. And we've already covered that in multiple podcasts. He did that so that you would realize you can't do it on your own. You cannot answer life's greatest problems, nor can you obtain anything meaningful based on your own effort and contrary to how much money you have or how smart you are. You wind up dealing with the mistakes you've made in your past and trying to find a way to live again.
And the guy that's writing it down says, again, did they stumble, the Jews, so as to fall beyond recovery? Not at all. Rather, because of their transgressions, salvation has come to Gentiles to make Israel envious. But if their transgression means riches to the world and their loss means riches for the Gentiles, remember, he makes a point. I'm an apostle to the Gentiles. I stood there while they stoned to death Stephen. I was standing there holding their clothes so they could kill him, and he's the one doing the talking. So you just look at it, you say, in the hope that I may somehow arouse my own people to envy and save some of them. If their rejection is the reconciliation of the world, what will their acceptance be but life from the dead? They can have the same, we all can have the same thing, but they just dug in their heels and said, these Gentiles, we just don't like them. In fact, we don't love you. You told us to love this bunch.
Yeah.
Well,
so another...
Hang on, Jess. Let's take a break.
And he was one of their killers.
Another parallel passage to that, what I read about before I get your definition of the spirit of stupor, is that in verse 32, it says, God has bound all men over to disobedience so that he may have mercy on them all, which is a very pondering verse.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like it's. I go back to the Luke 15 when the son said, "Give me all my stuff, give me an inheritance." He let him go.
Right.
Why? So the son would realize, you know what, wasn't real bad there.
Yeah. Exactly.
Once he wound up in a pig pen. So I think this is a bumper sticker. The Spirit of Stupor. It didn't say stupid. Spirit of Stupor. So what do y'all think stupor means?
I would say sluggish,
hard-headed,
foggy.
A condition of greatly dulled or completely suspended sense or sensibility.
Yeah.
You remember what the son, what was the triggering moment?
Coming to their senses.
In the pig pen, that's it. He came to his senses. You remember in Romans 1, he says they are senseless.
Right.
So
faithless. And then he adds heartless.
And the rednecks say
and
that.
then ruthless. I mean, that's a
a
bad human being there.
That's right.
The redneck definition would be, that old boy ain't got any sense.
Yeah.
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 I've heard you say that before.
Yeah.
That's right. Because I
always say, too dumb to pour pee out of a boot with the directions on the heel. You just don't get it.
Yeah,
Would they put directions on the heel?
Well,
even if they were there, you still wouldn't get it.
Oh.
That's how dumb you are. You're in a stupor. I think of it like someone wakes up, like something happens and you wake up. You know how it takes you a little while to figure out what's going on here, because I've been asleep.
Well,
that's
true.
That same kind of. But think about it. If you lived in that was the.
What's interesting is this definition. There's different ones when you Google. Someone who is in a stupor is almost unconscious,
Yeah.
and is unable to act or think normally, especially as a result of drink or drugs.
Yeah,
which is basically what happens. It's what happened in Luke 15, and it's what happens here.
The gospel is interjected as far as the gospel is concerned. Verse 28 of Romans 11. They are enemies on your account, but as far as election is concerned, they're loved by the Lord because of the patriarchs and all that. I can understand that, but I just want to interject here one little point about the religious world. And all of them, all the 25,000 different groups running around out there, it looks like, Jase, to me, my plea is a simple one. Why don't we just all come together on faith in Jesus coming down and becoming flesh, dying on a cross, being buried, and raised from the dead, and ascending back to heaven after 40 days? He convinced him he's alive and that he's there to mediate for us. And he'll give you life and immortality if you just love him and love each other. Why in the world, out of the 25,000 groups, I read their writings all the time. Al, it is painfully small for the ones who say, we just simply put our faith in Jesus coming down in flesh, dying and being buried for us and raised from the dead. I don't know why we can't all agree with that, come together on it, get rid of all the names, just say,
because I think
Jesus
it's like
people.
Nathaniel. He's like, ain't nothing.
I just don't know why it would be such a giant leap for people to get rid of the creeds. Just stick with the Bible. Don't come up with a creed. This is what we believe and all that. Just put your faith in the one who came down here 2021 years ago from the Virgin Mary, like God said.
Yep.
And a seed of a woman will save the world. He crushed Satan. And I just don't know how we don't come together on that and just let it fall where the liquor
because, like
chips.
Nathaniel said, but he's from Nazareth.
Yep.
I'm serious.
Yeah.
He's from Nazareth.
I have a hard time.
I mean, the arguments he's using, talking about his own people, the Jews here. Al, if you look at Christianity, it's so splintered and divided. No wonder we have all this trouble about it. Yeah. What are y'all? And all this. You see what I'm saying?
Well, that's why
it's not rocket science.
But that's why it's also so difficult, because it is faith. I mean, you do have to believe it. So what's interesting about this text as you read that he references, one, it's referenced twice in the Old Testament. You rarely see that. It was Deuteronomy 29, but it was also Isaiah 29. And what's interesting about that, so that's two different eras Deuteronomy, whenever that was mentioned then, Moses wrote that. He was talking about the ones who had come out of Egypt, and now they wanted to go back. And he was like, I mean, what is wrong with you people? What, God's delivered you, and you want to go back under slavery? That's the faith they had. But then Isaiah is 800 years after that, and he's got a whole other group of people. He's in that era when we talked about with Elijah.
Same argument.
Same argument. And now here Paul's making the same argument 700 years after that.
Yep.
So the point is, no matter what era the Israelites were in, they had a hard time putting their faith in God, even though he had chosen them to bring Jesus to the world.
Works.
It was difficult.
What was your buddy, old Jim McGuigan? Legalism is a killer. He got that accent over there. That's that Scottish, whatever.
That is
I
Irish.
remember when he said it first. He wasn't saying legalism first, but he said it must be hunted down and killed for the animal that it is. Legalism. You know,
I'll never forget. Let's take the last break. I'll never forget when McGuigan was preaching one time, and he talked about the some of the prison walls of a concentration camp, and the Germans had put in there, for the Jewish people, work will set you free.
Yeah,
and
I think that's hanging over Auschwitz.
It is. Work will set you free.
I looked up and I saw that and I thought, yeah.
And I remember McGuigan said
the same sermon.
McGuigan said, that's a damnable lie.
Yeah.
That was what he said.
Which it is a lie.
It was a lie to them because they were going to kill them in there. The work was not going to set them free.
But it's a lie in the church.
And that was his whole point.
And it's not like God didn't create us to do good works. He says that in Ephesians 2.
Yeah. We are his workmanship.
We just get the cart before the horse. We believe that work will set you free. You work hard enough, long enough, and right enough, you'll obtain freedom.
So that's why he said in
you break the law at one point, you're guilty of breaking all
free
of it.
from what? If you can't get out of the ground and you can't make wrongs right, what can you do?
He said in verse 5 of 11, at the present time, there is a remnant chosen by grace. And if by grace, then it is no longer by works. If it were grace, grace would no longer be grace. I mean, in other words, he's saying that if it depends any on you, it's not grace.
That's right.
It's not from God, that was the whole issue that they were having. But then he almost has to come back to the Gentiles, but said, but wait a minute, don't get too full of yourself, because remember, you were grafted in. The root was a Jewish root, and you read about that too. A root would spring up out of Israel.
I learned this principle when I saw our neighbor graft trees, because then I thought, he's doing this quicker. He was taking one tree, growing
a bitter pecan,
and then put
sweet pecan
on top of it.
They put it in a crease in it and tape it up, and it was a bitter pecan from then on up to that crease. But where he put the transplant in, the result was the fruit was sweet pecans instead of bitter pecans. So
but humans are not trees. And
right.
so they're like, I ain't going with that group.
That's right.
I ain't being grafted in with nobody.
That's it.
He said, if some of the branches have been broken off, and you, though, he's talking about the Gentiles, though a wild olive shoot, have been grafted in among the others, and now sharing the nourishment sap from the olive root, do not boast over you being a branch.
We made it and they didn't.
That's exactly right.
Don't do that.
You do not support the root, but the root supports you. And I think that's where this...
If he didn't spare the original, he said he won't spare you either.
Exactly.
So consider the kindness and sternness of God who did that. He said, just consider that.
Yeah.
And
I've always thought that this concept was really why America, all throughout our history, has been very supportive of Israel.
Yep.
Because there is that,
me included.
Yeah, us too. And because of Christianity, we're supportive of the root.
Yep.
And so, there's been no greater ally to Israel than the U.S. And I think the reason why is because of what we read about in the New Testament.
It's true.
I've always thought that.
They were in the Bible.
Right. And that's our history. Like we share all that history.
We owe the Jews.
We do.
I've been grafted.
Jesus is a Jew.
Yeah.
I mean, he came here.
I studied with a Jewish guy on that TV crew, and when I was showing him all these things, he said, Phil, you've almost persuaded me. He said, but all my family members are rabbis. He said, but you've almost got me to the point to where I think maybe you might be right, but I'm scared to say that.
Almost.
He was close, but I don't know whether he ever moved on. He said, but you've got me. And he did his hand like that.
Yeah.
He said, you've got me mighty close. I said, your Messiah is my Messiah.
That's right.
We all can
we
be
share
brought
that
together. He
together.
was like, in fact, I was making my argument from where we've been 9, 10, or 11 of Romans. That was what I was showing him. He was like,
He almost went from stupor to super. Stupor to super.
There's another bumper sticker. There's a T-shirt.
He
I've
liked
gone from
the verse
to super.
He liked the verse and said, I don't even know. I got a Jewish Bible, not y'all's. He said, but I didn't know that was in there, that Ishmael was a wild ass of a man. In the King James, it says wild ass. but in the NIV, it says wild donkey of a man.
Yeah, that's
and he said, is that in the Bible? I said, yeah, see right here, Ishmael.
Yep.
And he said, well, that sums it all up because he's fighting with the Arabs all the time.
Yeah.
I said, this goes way back. They will live Ishmael will live in hostility toward all his brothers. And then he had all these sons and said, and they lived in hostility toward everybody.
Yep.
And he said, man, I didn't know that. So he said, I'm going to show the rabbis that.
And isn't it interesting that all these thousands of years later, the attitudes are still very similar? I mean, Israel's on an island.
If you stop at Malachi and don't go on after that 400-year lull and don't see John the Baptist coming up out of the way, if you miss that part, you'll really miss it, Al.
That's exactly right. So when you get to the end, I want to read this last. The NIV puts the title doxology, which is not in the text, but it basically means here's the way he's going to wrap up this section. Because remember, he's put some pretty hard things out here, but he says there's a door open always to the gospel, and including for the Jews,
world,
for everybody,
past, present, and future.
That's right.
I mean, he was trying to reach everyone through Jesus.
You know what's cool to look forward to from all of that, talking to the Jews, the Apostle Paul, when he gets to Romans 12, that's after 9, 10, and 11. When he gets there,
that was deep.
He basically says, he basically saying, look, just offer your bodies as living sacrifices.
Right.
Do it. The opposite of law is all the way through Romans 12.
It is.
It's how you behave.
Well, and he's
it's
talking
not
about worship,
It's not
too.
by worship. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he's talking about your worship, your spiritual act of worship is offering your body as a living sacrifice. It's not this ritualistic.
That's right.
Where you are from, code, self-based.
Going to the temple and entering your church building, the sanctuary of your church building. I'm like, no, there's no sanctuary there. Right. No, shouldn't use terms like that.
That's right.
But then he uses that phrase that don't be conformed to the pattern of the world, which is basically worship anything but God, but be transformed. Yeah, that's where we'll be
next time. So let me read this last bit because I do think it's interesting that he ends with this. Out of these 3 chapters that he's been making his case, he said, oh, the depths of the riches of the wisdom and knowledge of God, how unsearchable his judgments and his paths beyond tracing out. Who has known the mind of the Lord, or who has been his counselor? Who has ever given to God that God should repay him? For from him and through him and to him are all things. To him be the glory forever.
There it is.
Amen. Which is really powerful because to me, is at the end of the day, he's saying, you know what? We just got to trust that God knows more than we do.
By the way, in my humble opinion, until the United States of America recognizes what that doxology by the Apostle Paul quoting the scriptures of the past, until they understand this, Al, our nation will never be healed.
That's right.
So the Jews are not only the hard heads. There's a lot of Gentiles got hard heads too out there.
Right.
But he's also giving you hope. In 29 we didn't read, but it's just a little bumper sticker statement that says God's gifts and his call are irrevocable.
Yes.
Yep.
Once you answer the call, you're in.
Right.
We're talking about an eternal God, the most powerful
Think
being.
about those words: irrevocable, inseparable, can't separate, non-condemned. I mean, all this stuff we've been reading about. I mean, it's the place to be.
Yep.
Christian is the place to be. Thanks for listening to the Unashamed podcast. Help us out by rating us on iTunes. And don't miss an episode by subscribing on YouTube, and be sure to click that little bell to get notified about new episodes. And for even more content that you won't get anywhere else, subscribe to Blaze TV at blazetv.com/unashamed.